Anna? Huh.
Yep, I'm here. Yep.
All right. Go ahead and get started here. Meeting of the Medford City Council Resident Services and Public Engagement Committee. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Lazaro.
Present.
Councilor Lemming.
Present.
Councilor Callahan is present. I didn't hear that you call me.
I got you, Anna.
Thanks.
Councilor Scarpelli. And Councilor Singh.
Present.
4 present, 1 absent. Meeting is called to order. First item that we're going to discuss is 24-354, the resolution to publish a city council newsletter. A draft of the newsletter was forwarded to everybody in the agenda packet. I also earlier today forwarded a copy, an updated copy of the newsletter with some suggestions to reflect events from the meeting last night. Councilor Callahan, you have
Whenever you're done, I have 2 very small changes.
Okay, yep. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. 1 moment. Okey-dokey. So this newsletter, as per the schedule that we voted on earlier, was drafted by Council President Bears. I forwarded the link to everybody here, made a couple of suggestions, and then Councilor Bears earlier today also edited those to provide his own suggestions. So if folks have anything that they'd like to add to the newsletter, feel free. I'll start with Councilor Callahan.
Sorry, having trouble with my mute button. I'm here. Just 2 very small things in the very first paragraph. I would have us use a word other than elected. I tripped over it when I read it, and I think if we can say we voted to place, or there's other ways to put that. I would just use a different word than elected, because it's easy to read like we were elected to place these, like just another word. And then the other one is
sorry, can you wait? Sorry, I'm trying to find exactly where you said elected with voted. Sorry.
Yeah, just change it to voted, and then people they won't trip over it. Ready for my second one?
Well, yeah. So okay. So it looks like that was in the latest updates from Council President Bears. It looks like he already struck that out and replaced it with.
So I'm going off the one that you sent out today, which I thought was the latest. Sorry. Why don't I mention my only other thing, and then if you guys already fixed it, then great. Is that okay?
Okay.
It's under general business. The first bullet point should be 2 sentences. One about the budget, and the second one about the school system. It's just a little confusing and kind of run on.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. And are you seeing the changes that I made? Is this fine with you?
Yeah, looks great. Great.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else have any suggestions for the current draft of the newsletter? Counselor Sang.
For the third bullet point here with the overrides, it might be a little bit more readable if before the 3 points, we put 1 and then like parentheses,
Okay.
2 parentheses, 3 parentheses.
Okay.
Or we could also break it down into smaller bullet points, but I don't know if that will fit on the page.
Yeah, that with the with the final PDF way it would end up being formatted. I'm not 100% sure
Okay, yeah.
about that. I mean, but I do agree. This generally does make it more
Thank you.
readable.
Yeah, this is helpful.
Okay.
There was one thing that I wanted to, substance-wise, I think you and Counselor Callahan had met with the Brazilian population, right, and had a listening group session. I think that would be worth mentioning in resident services. And I don't know if we covered the senior center listening session in the last newsletter, but that if we didn't, then this would be a good place to mention it as well.
What date was that? Okay, yeah. Met with Anna, do you remember what exactly the date was that we met with the
It was
Portuguese?
Friday. It was a Friday, so it was a week ago Friday, I think.
the 19th?
Mm-hmm.
It could be a good idea to just briefly summarize what was discussed or just state that we did it.
I think either would work. I don't know if
I would
other
just state that we did it, honestly. I think because otherwise, like, some people might be offended that their thing didn't get mentioned, and I think it's easier to just say that we met with them and had a fruitful discussion.
yeah.
Okay, I always write things in a very boring way, so let me know if like these two are, sufficiently descriptive.
While
Okay.
we're on this topic, would Chair Lemming, would you be comfortable summarizing some of what you did hear from the 2 listening sessions?
Yeah, I was actually, Anna and I were kind of talking about how to present that. So
Okay.
I did take notes from them. I was kind of thinking that maybe some kind of a quarterly report on it, but we were sort of thinking like, okay, do residents see these listening sessions as being semi-confidential? Like, do they not want notes of what they talked about to be public record?
Right.
So I think that those things would need to be discussed. It would definitely be a good agenda item to bring up formally for the next resident services meeting. I'm not sure if we would have time or be able to discuss it extensively at this particular meeting because it's not on the agenda, but maybe we could.
Yeah, I mean, my interpretation of law is it's fine, because we're already talking about it, and I think it's a natural place of discussion, but I also don't want to step on anyone's toes, and I think it makes sense to have a formal paper number if you want that, or a formal, have that be on the agenda to talk about, for sure.
Can I just chime in very quickly?
Counselor Callahan.
Thank you. I just want to say that I think an easy way to make it okay for the populations that we're talking to is to have the person who organized it just send them a draft. I don't think we're going to say anything super personal. We're not going to mention anybody. But if we send them a draft and be like, hey, this is what we're going to say. If you don't let us know by next week, we'll go ahead with it. That at least gives us some, like allows them to say, oh, they prefer that we don't mention that one thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if we're worried about confidentiality or things like that, an alternative idea is that you send the clerk a write-up, and the clerk can distribute it to city councilors. And instead of talking about it in an open meeting, like this, we can just have councilors review individually, and then maybe quarterly we have a more general meeting about what we've read in all these reports. But Chair Lemming, I think this is at your discretion, and I trust your judgment. And
yeah, no, I mean, it is definitely something. And I was also kind of thinking like that this would actually come up in the next agenda item, because some of the stuff that we did here at the listening sessions would be relevant to the city guide that we're talking about. But I do agree that having it be discussed and sort of like the ideas like sort of codified and shared with the rest of the council is definitely gets to the spirit of those listening sessions. To the newsletter, is there any other, and again, I apologize for some of the last minute updates, but the goal with these is to summarize the most recent events leading up to the current meeting. Is there any other feedback that that councilors have about the current draft of the newsletter that you'd like to see?
I think it looks fine, but if you could just keep the edits up on the screen for me to, the new stuff up on the screen for me to quickly look through.
Do you have a link to the?
I have the link, but it doesn't show, because we don't have edit access, it doesn't show these recommendations.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, that's why we've been kind of.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay, so. Sorry, so to be clear about the process for doing this, I have Google documents that I share with the individual counselors who are drafting that current one. I did not know that people who just view these things don't actually see the current edits. Councilor Lazaro.
One suggestion, the pink above where your cursor is, can you change the word suffering? At the June 11th meeting, we passed a resolution to recognize and discuss the Stop the Stigma campaign, which humanizes our neighbors with substance use disorder. Please.
Wait, sorry.
Strike out suffering from and just change it to with.
Suffering from. Okay. Okay, and I'll also just kind of scroll through this and very slowly to give everybody, I will address this issue the next time, so that I'm just going to start from the top, okay? And just, again, apologies that I didn't know it was invisible to people who just had view access to this. So sort of summarizing the updates, Council President Bears added the resolutions commemorating individuals at the last meeting, Sylvia Janis, Donna Lasky, as well as Tom Lincoln, and the passing of former Medford Police Department Detective Lauren Kane. So we added those to commemorations and acknowledgements. There was the acknowledgement of the Stop the Stigma campaign from the June 11th meeting. I added in the appointments from the June 25th meeting to the Affordable Housing Trust, the Community Preservation Committee, and the free cash allocation to the study for the New Medford High School. Council President Bears added details about the stabilization funds that we also allocated free cash to right here. So, you know, just kind of detailing what happened at the later on last night in the meeting. And we approved the new South Street Historic District Ordinance for its first reading. Again, just summarizing what happened yesterday. Some edits to the Public Works and Facilities Committee, which recognize the fact that Councilor Lazaro's resolution to host a discussion of Mass DOT plans for the Medford Square Main Street intersection. Planning and Permitting Committee, the zoning related recommendations of both Medford's comprehensive and climate plan and how they can be best incorporated into the zoning update project. And at the May 28th regular meeting, first round of zoning updates from the zoning update project. June 12th committee meeting, zoning update project, council's priorities that will policies and plan recommendations to implement, and a draft timeline of what elements of the project should be started first. Then the licensing of the methadone clinic that we referred to committee yesterday, as well as the planning, the zoning update projects, timeline and maps from the planning and permitting committee. And those, yep.
Just a small grammar point for in the methadone point. Instead of saying it, because the thing's plural.
June 25th.
So the third line, it says to account for it, but we're talking about licenses, permits, and zoning. Them or these factors, yeah.
Features, okay. June 25th planning. Okay, so that's about all. Do any counselors have any suggestions for further edits to this draft? And once again, my apologies for the fact that most people here couldn't see the updates until just now.
No worries. Pending any further remarks, I'd like to move to approve this for distribution.
Move. We have a motion on the floor on the motion by Councilor Sang, seconded by Councilor Lazaro. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Counselor Callahan,
Yes.
Counselor Lazaro,
Yes.
Counselor Lemming,
Yes.
Counselor Scarpelli, Counselor Sang.
Yes.
Four in the affirmative, one absent, motion passes. Moving on. 24-370 offered by Councilor Sang. Resolution to create a residence guide to city council's procedures and processes. Be it resolved that the Resident Services Public Engagement Committee create and publish a short guide in English and commonly spoken non-English languages to the city council for residents to understand the city council's procedures and its processes. Imagine this could just be a general discussion of our ideas of what this should contain. Is there any comments on the floor? Councilor Sang.
Yeah, thank you for putting this on the agenda for this meeting, Chair Lemming. This is my resolution, so I feel like I should introduce it real quick. I think we generally know what I'm talking about here, but I was thinking we could make a short one-pager where introducing what we do and how we work as a city council to residents. This is something that we've heard in public participation over the last few meetings. Sometimes people get a little confused about, when we take a vote, why can't we have public participation after that? It's because it's disposed of, basic things like that. The order of a meeting, what Robert's rules are, what it means to talk through the chair. There's some, I think basic frequently asked questions that we get that we could find a way to organize onto a one-pager that we put out in the audience, and we leave some copies up here with Larry during the meetings for residents to access, and that we can post on the city website I think our rules document is very comprehensive, but also very, I don't think residents have the time nor the energy to read through our whole rules document. So I was thinking that we could put together something short. I was also thinking that for the translations, we can work with community liaisons and translators in our community to create that doc. I'd be happy to be the one to put this together. But I wanted to make sure that this was put on the agenda tonight so I could solicit feedback from all my fellow counselors about what are some important points to put on this document.
Counselor Callahan.
Thank you. I love the idea. I think in addition to what we hear from people who already attend the meetings, I would hope that maybe at the top, we put some information for people who have never attended a meeting that simply says, hey, here's how to find out what we're going to talk about. Here's how to come, here's what will happen when you come to City Hall. You will have the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes on any topic, like letting people who've never been know that they are welcome and how they can begin participating. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Lozaro.
I think this is a great idea. I like the concept of the one pager as a really accessible length. I also think that maybe if we had an online document that was a one pager with maybe click through FAQs, because I think it could very quickly turn into a longer document. Once you get into Robert's rules, when you get into what does it mean to speak through the chair, I think those answers are going to get longer. I also think like just the basic information about what our city council, based on our charter, has under its purview. So like the city council is in charge of zoning, approving the budget, and ordinances. Those are like the big things that we do. And those are different from what the mayor's administration does and different from what the school committee does. And these are the three biggest branches of our local government. But, maybe working in conjunction with the mayor's office and the school committee to help our residents understand what those differences are. So if they need to do something that doesn't fall under the umbrella of the city council, that they can go to one of those different departments to figure that out. I find often that people will come to city council for something that might be a mayor's administration issue or a city issue that's under a department like public works or something like that, or a school committee issue. Really, it's something about like something that's being taught in the schools or something to do with a teacher or something to do with the school administration. That's really a school committee issue. So that being said, I do think a one pager is great, but that maybe there could be something that's like a longer thing that we can go to, whether that's online or on paper.
So to summarize what I've heard, people generally like the idea of having a short one pager for people to go through, though with the possibility of having supplementary documents that explain in more detail what the different rules and processes are. The having something just right at the top for people who've literally never been to city council meetings before, and just like very quick and dirty sort of points like, when we take a vote, why there's not necessarily public participation there, as well as basic info about what the city council is in charge of and what falls under purview of other departments. In terms of format, I think it would be a good idea to have a one pager and like, you see that little plastic thing right there where they have agendas out. So just have something like that sitting out there. So it would be a good idea, since this will be printed, to have everything in black and white. So try to not and this is just my initial take, try to not indulge too much in super colorful graphics, but just kind of keep a very basic presentation. The important thing would be to have it done in multiple languages. Not that we don't have to have graphics or anything, but just make it so that it looks reasonable when you print it off on a laser printer. That's the other piece of feedback I have, but I do agree that a nice one pager for people who come in here have never attended a meeting before and can just kind of like take that as something to hold would be a very nice thing. Okay, is there any other?
Mr. Chair, would you be, I'm just thinking about the drafting. Would it be reasonable to have something like, not way too colorful, but a little color for the digital version and then something that prints well on black and white?
I guess leading up to this meeting, I actually was thinking that like having a nice, colorful kind of graphics-based thing would be like a really cool product to show people, but I'm also thinking about practicality. When people come to a city council meeting, it's often in person, and I've heard a lot of people say, this is my first city council meeting, I have no idea what's going on. And when we get these agenda packets, very often, and this is something that I even mentioned last night, the PDFs are sort of like very nice looking, very presentable, very colorful, but when they're printed, and again, this is just like a super practical issue, it just doesn't translate well into black and white, and that will be the reality of residents that are actually holding this guide. So I think simplicity is the name of the game here. It doesn't necessarily have to be pretty, but it does have to be like, okay, if a person is holding this piece of paper, they can kind of get the gist of what's going on.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. So I guess if you're comfortable with it, what I could do is create a digital version, one that's designed for digital and one that's designed for in-person use. They wouldn't be very different, but for example, maybe the digital one has hyperlinks to like an FAQ or something, whereas the printed one is just the bare basics of what we're trying to express. And you know, with the digital, maybe you'd have blue for the hyperlinks or something. Yeah.
There's a movie that I saw a clip of one time as well, where it discussed the process of designing a new type of tank within the Pentagon, and throughout the design process, different generals kept on giving their different pieces of input to the design of this thing, and the end product was something that had been completely designed by committee and was like totally impractical. So I do think that there is that element of that in making this as well.
I totally, I think you may be expecting that I'm going to create something masterful and colorful and full of graphics, and I assure you I do not have that design ability.
my point in saying that is that we are giving these suggestions, and I have my own opinions on this, but you know you're the artist, so
I think that's far too big a portion of myself.
You know, I think it's important.
You're confusing him with Kit. That's Kit.
I may be sitting in kid seats right now.
Like,
That's right. That's right.
That is true. We're discussing what's essentially an artistic project, and we don't have the one artist on city council on this committee. So there, I could see some issues with that. But no, but that is to say we are making these suggestions, but it is important to filter through what is the most essential information for someone who has no idea what's going on. Try to put that front and center. The goal of this is that if somebody's entering these chambers, they don't know anything, they can read this piece of paper and get the 411, and oftentimes having too much information in one place could end up not being beneficial for that. Councilor Lazzaro.
I do also wonder if this may not be what we're talking about tonight, but I think that there might be a benefit to a guide for people who are coming in for their first council meeting, hoping to speak on an agenda item, and they don't know how or when or how to go about that. And it can be really intimidating, not knowing where to sit, not knowing who everybody is, what is a clerk, you know, like genuinely, these are confusing processes. So part of me wonders about like maybe it's a second, oh, sorry, maybe it's a second one pager. That's like, so this is your first council meeting and you would like to speak on an agenda item. Here's the process. And I would, if that's like more than you would want to do, I would be happy to draft something if we end up wanting to maybe address that. Because I think it would be separate from an introduction to the work of the council, what the council does. Because that might be a separate thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a color printer in this building?
No.
Okay, well,
No, we should definitely design for black and white printing. Yeah.
Chair?
For sure.
Council Callahan.
Thanks. Now that I'm hearing all these things, I'm envisioning like at a table at the front of the hall, the minute people walk in the door, and there's one that says, so it's your first council meeting. There's another one, like the green one says, so it's your first council meeting. The blue one says, here's the purview of the city council. The yellow one says, frequently asked questions from people who have attended council meetings. Like they're all like separate pages that just cover sort of one topic. Maybe that's going overboard, but that's what, once Councilor Lozaro started speaking, then I was like, oh, like this could be something that people can be like, oh, which of these is the right, one for me? If we can't fit everything on one page.
So,
Yeah, I think the goal should, I think we should set the goal of still trying to put everything on one page, but I guess it seems like we're in agreement that if it becomes unwieldy, then creating a second one pager might make sense, and separating out, like, if this is your first time at a city council meeting versus like maybe something along the lines of like purview and stuff like that. I think that makes sense.
So I do, with Anna's suggestion, I am inclined to think, so starting out with like a city council guide that looks clean, smooth, one pager would be great. And then probably expanding to having something out front for that, if we have like a nice city council one, we could also then do a general city hall one, which maybe, okay, this is your first time in city hall. If you are a small business owner, go to this department on this floor, you can talk to this person and something like that. But there should be room to be able to scale it to other departments, but the initial model, just to keep the project simple, I feel like, we just start out by knowing what our scope is and just getting the first guide right, and then after that expanding to that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that's a good idea. And you mentioned at earlier on in the meeting that this is something that you've heard a little bit about in your listening sessions, that sometimes folks come to City Hall and they don't really know which office to go to. They find it a little confusing. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think in terms of workflow, it might make sense for us to start with the city council first, and then whether it's a new paper number or it's continued on this paper number, it might have to be a new paper number that we create something for City Hall as well. And I think that makes sense. I did want to ask the committee whether you all thought that there was an organized way to solicit feedback, or solicit requests from the public about what they would like to see on the one pager. I was thinking, as an individual counselor, I could post on my social media or on Reddit or something, a Google form asking for, what would you be interested in seeing? But I don't know if that's the most accessible way or the best way to solicit feedback.
Councilor Lozaro.
Well, we went through the social media guidelines for city council social account, so we could post from that if we wanted into, Facebook groups or Reddit, and just solicit using maybe a Google form, like what of the following would you be interested in learning about first? What would be the most important, and present it like a survey. We could even have it attached to the newsletter when that goes out, like a link to the survey if we want.
Yeah, makes sense.
So personally with the survey, I think having a draft first, I think it would be more effective to have a draft and then put that out and ask for feedback on it. It's just kind of my initial thoughts on it. And then say, is this helpful to you? Please give us feedback, and then update it from there, just so that people sort of have an idea of what you're talking about. That's just my thinking on that, though. So it would, again, you're the artist, so don't let me. I'm not going to tell Van Gogh what shade of yellow to use in the process.
Earlier on this in this meeting, I thought you were trying to do some big government regulation on the colors that we could use for the guide. No, I'm kidding. But I think both comments that have been said make a lot of sense. We could do that on like a city council social media account, and then also I could just individually solicit feedback as well. I think it does make sense to have something first and then to ask for feedback on it. I guess I'm thinking about procedure. I actually think that approach makes more sense. I'm just thinking about procedurally in city council, how that would go about, because we would probably vote this out favorably and then get the city council to approve it. I think that's what would have to happen. And then for us to edit it, then I'd have to present a new paper number, which seems a little bit cumbersome of a process. I am curious what Councillor Callahan has any thoughts about this.
Councillor Callahan, tell us your thoughts right now.
Sorry. Distracted for just a second. Tell me again. Ask me the question, more direct question.
Everybody in this packed room is waiting for your thoughts.
Did you hear me just ask you?
Oh, sorry. I was too busy making jokes. Yeah, on the best way to get feedback for the guide from residents. The discussion was.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Great question. Your guess is as good as mine.
I guess what we could do is we could try to do both. We could try to put out like an initial ask for requests for input, and then try to incorporate that over the next month. And then after like, let's say a few months, ask instead of maybe doing a formal request for feedback on the doc, just generally see organically, like if there's any feedback for edits, and then revisit in a few months if we need to, and create a new paper number for it.
I feel like if we're kind of looking at, I don't think that there would be much of an issue with you as an individual, as you're coming up with with like an initial draft for this, posting this to, one of your accounts just to get some feedback from folks, and then bringing it to the body, which, and I'm mainly saying that just because that possibly would be a way to speed up the process and not have to vote a draft of something out of a meeting and then get approval from the general body. So I'm just trying to think of ways to kind of simplify the process of drafting a one-pager here. Councilor?
I do think streamlining this, simplifying this is in our interest. So I think I would fall on the side of, like I suggested the other way, but I would fall on the side of drafting something and then asking.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm down for it. I think it is more streamlined in terms of like the in a whole perspective view of it. It's just maybe a few more steps on the city council side of introducing paper numbers and stuff like that, but that's not a problem with me either. Yeah,
cool. Then in terms of future directions, we did receive just because we said we were going to talk about this on the last agenda item, we did receive some feedback from some folks at our listening sessions who are saying that, they go into City Hall, they don't know like where to go from there. So I know that we're talking about solely a city council one-pager guide for residents, but scaling, like moving forward, it would be good to at least start thinking about, if somebody literally enters the building and they want to talk to someone about getting a license, then having something right there for them to look at, maybe having a greeter if that's a thing that City Hall has capacity for, like, I don't know, the equivalent of a receptionist just right in the middle of City Hall would be a nice thing to have as soon as we get the funding for something like that. But anyway, those are just some informal notes from our listening sessions. Is there any further discussion on this agenda item?
I would just motion to let this committee authorize that I create a draft, and that I present the draft before the next committee meeting. I'm thinking timeline, it might make sense workload wise for me to have a draft attached to the agenda for the next meeting, and to have counselors send feedback through the chair or to me, or through the clerk to me before that meeting, so I can incorporate it into a draft.
So Annie, did you get the entirety of that motion?
Sorry,
Yep.
no.
I'm totally ready.
We can just say,
I'm totally ready.
have the committee authorize Counselor Sang to create a draft for before the next committee meeting, and to solicit feedback through the clerk's office before that meeting as well.
One pager.
Yep, on the one pager. It's very, very controversial motion, Counselor Sang. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
We have two.
Okay,
All right.
Sorry, I feel like I gave you very motion.
I get it.
All right.
Where'd you go?
Yes, well, before we vote, do we have any public participation? Anybody interested in public participation? Okay, seeing none in the chambers and none on Zoom, we'll go ahead and call the vote. Roll call.
Counselor Callahan,
Yes.
Counselor Lazaro.
Yes.
Counselor Lemming,
Yes.
Counselor Scarpelli, absent, Counselor Sang.
Yes.
Four present, four in favor, one absent. The motion passes.
Motion adjourned.
On the motion to adjourn, seconded by Counselor, was that a second, Counselor Callahan?
Yes, it was.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Callahan,
Yes.
Counselor Lazaro,
Yes.
Counselor Lemming,
Yes,
Counselor Scarpelli, Counselor Sang.
Yes.
four present, four affirmative, one absent. The motion passes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.